Hello everyone, I'm Afaf Kanja and welcome to South News. We're honored to have joining us today the First Lady of the Republic of Malawi, Madame Callista Mutharika. Your Excellency, welcome to South News. It's so wonderful to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you. You are truly a leading advocate for the empowerment of women in Africa. You are here in New York, you are here at the United Nations, advocating specifically on the issue of fighting against breast cancer and cervical cancer and building support and awareness on these tragedies. Tell us what progress you're seeing and what you think needs to be done on the political front.
I think we are making progress towards fighting breast and cervical cancer, non-communicable diseases, but we have a lot of challenges. And this is why leadership at the highest level is needed. And this is why the Forum of African First Ladies have taken it upon themselves to see that the people of Africa, the people of the world, are aware as to what is happening to women of Africa with regards to women cancers, breast and cervical. So we think the best way forward at the moment is to make sure that there is awareness amongst the women of Africa, because they themselves lack knowledge as to what is breast cancer, what is cervical cancer. So we want to bring awareness to these women. We've taken it upon ourselves to ensure that we reach out to the media so that the media as well comes up with clear, correct messages as to what is breast cancer, what is cervical cancer, so that the women know when to go to the hospital for screening, which they don't at the moment. You'll be surprised. Even educated women don't go for screening because there is not much information about breast and cervical cancer. They don't know that there is a vaccine for cervical cancer, the HPV. They don't know it. Even me, it's only yesterday that I knew that it's now become so common that every woman in America is going for it. And I was telling my husband to say, there's a vaccination for cervical cancer. So if I don't know, what more with the people out there? So the first thing we have to do, as women leaders, as First Ladies of Africa, is to ensure that we speak to our husbands who are the presidents, the heads of state, heads of government. We speak to parliamentarians so that we come up with policies, legislations that will support women to ensure that the ministers of health have enough resources to begin to address these cancers, because they have now become so common in Africa. More especially, I think, cervical cancer. And I think there's some connection between HIV, AIDS, and cervical cancer. So it's now on the increase, and it's very important that we begin to address it. And this is where we are now.
Your Excellency, may I impress on the fact that you yourself mentioned yesterday during discussions on this matter that you're not seeing enough response or support from various ministries in Africa. How can you shift this?
I think one of the ways would be by having women leaders. Say women leaders in parliament, women leaders as cabinet ministers. And you'll find that these days there is a lot of campaign within Africa to see more women go into politics, because it will only be when we have more women leaders in parliament, in cabinet, and in public office that will have our problems addressed. And one of the problems that these women would have to address is that of breast cancer and cervical cancer. So in Malawi, I am taking the lead to see that we increase the number of women in public office.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think that's what.
And that's truly empowering right there.
Yes.
As a mother, you are an amazing advocate for safe motherhood. We've got this beautiful safe motherhood in pictures. It really tells it all just by looking at it. What is some of the progress you're witnessing in your beautiful country?
Awareness is now coming to the people, especially the rural mothers. They're getting the message, and they're now making sure that they deliver their babies at the hospital or at a health center, which they never used to do before. Before, they relied on their grandmothers to assist them giving birth, and that's why we're having so many mothers dying whilst giving life. But now the message is getting there. We haven't yet reached there, but we are fighting hard to make sure that women understand that it is important for them to deliver at a hospital rather than in a madhouse, in a village where the equipment is not there, the medicines are not there. If when there is a complication, the grandmother, the traditional birth attendant, doesn't know what to do and the woman dies. So that's the most important thing that is happening, that progress is there. But we still need to work hard to ensure that we meet the Millennium Development Goals. We have made a bit of progress because a few years ago, our maternal mortality rate was at 907 per 100,000 deaths, but now we've reduced it to about 500 and something per 100,000. So, you know, as a leader, as the first lady of the country, I've also begun to participate in this fight against maternal deaths. And one of the challenges that we have is lack of medical personnel, lack of midwives. So I've now sponsored rural girls to go into midwifery courses so that after they have finished, they can return to their homes and assist their communities to ensure that the women get the messages and the women deliver at health centers.
And then they're more empowered at an early age with that knowledge and those resources. So it's a cycle.
It's a cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the Millennium Development Goals, you know, just last year, Malawi was honored during the Millennium Development Goals Gala for the improvement, the amazing improvements on food security. And of course, the president was here receiving that award. Tell us a little bit more about education, however. For example, some of the most remote areas in Malawi still practice some of those more traditional practices that really harm other people more than do good. For example, it's my understanding that when a wife loses her husband, the chief tribesman, copulates with her to sort of relieve her of this malady, let's say. But that could propose possibly more infections, HIV, so on and so forth. So what's being done to target those areas in Malawi that don't necessarily have the educational infrastructure that they need?
Again, government is there, the civil society is there, development agencies are there, fighting these traditions, these cultures that are destroying the people of our country. And people are beginning to understand. And you may not know, but Malawi is a star performer, even with regard to HIV and AIDS. We have so many other countries coming to Malawi to learn from us on how we have managed, to challenge these very difficult, traditions, customs, and so on. And we see now that people are beginning to understand because we are there, the government is there, development agencies are there, everybody is there and saying, can you stop this sort of customs and cultures?
So you actually go within these communities?
Yes, we do. Yes,
with educators, with how do you change that? How do you shift that?
Normally what happens is that either government or development agencies, they identify people within the communities who are leaders to be talking to their own people, to say these cultures will destroy them, are destroying them, and give them examples and so on of what has been happening. And then you see that the people begin to understand. Yes. And it's the same thing with regard to female condoms. Most women didn't want them previously, but now you go into some rural areas, you find that they've begun to understand that these female condoms can assist them, can help them. They are now beginning to develop negotiation skills with their husbands, with their tribesmen, and so on, to say, let us stop this because it will destroy us. We won't be able to look after our children, and we have that responsibility to see to it that this country develops. And we as the mothers, we as the men, are the ones, society will judge if we don't change. Yes.
And you've targeted the food security, and you're working on education, and that's how you empower society as you're doing.
Yes.
Let's cross over to economy, Your Excellency. How are you, as a former Minister of Tourism, you know a lot about, and you've been in government for quite a while yourself, so let's talk a little bit about stimulating Malawi's economy a little bit more and kind of giving it that edge, as all countries need now after this global financial recession.
Yes.
What are you doing in terms of really inviting more foreign investment and bringing more tourism into the country?
We have departments that are responsible for that. We have the Malawi Investment Department, and then we have the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and these people from these departments usually are traveling around the world, marketing Malawi, enticing investors to come into the country to say Malawi is a peaceful country. Malawi is really a good country for investment because the government will look after you, and you can be assured that once you have struck a contract and the agreements and so on, they will be followed to make sure that you benefit, but the government also benefits. So I think in recent years, we have seen more investors coming into the country. Also, I think because the economy has continued to grow. Last year, it was second to Qatar in the whole world, which means that we have done very, very well. And we were the best in Southern Africa. So, I see when investors see that happening, peaceful, the economy growing, it entices them to come into the country. And that is happening. We've seen people coming to prospect minerals and so on. And I think all the time we're seeing people coming in, and even tourism has, we've seen that more and more tourists are coming into the country. But I think what we need to do now is to ensure that we come up with infrastructure that supports and complements the Malawi as a beautiful country where we have a beautiful lake, the third largest in the country, with about 1,000 species of fish and so on. And you may have heard that we are called the warm heart of Africa because the people are always smiling and welcoming. So, it's all those things.
Which brings me to climate change, and I have to ask, it's such an imperative issue. It's really hitting people in the face with Japan, Australia, you name it, right? It's sort of becoming back-to-back, or sort of a smack in the face in our world. The United Nations is talking about sustainable development, building green economy. What can you tell us that the president and the government is doing, of course, with your beautiful support, in really ensuring the stability and safety and security of Malawis?
The simplest thing that the Malawi government is doing is encouraging communities to plant trees. And from December to April is the planting season for trees. And the president himself launches it nationally. After that, it is the ministers launching the tree planting period in all the districts of Malawi. So we are working with the communities. We actually, to entice them to plant more trees, we've started projects where they plant trees and we pay them, something. And so you find that there is a lot of eagerness and enthusiasm to plant more trees. I think that is the simplest that we can do, which doesn't require so much resources. And everybody is eager to do now because the president at the highest level of leadership has committed himself to doing that.
And the benefits would be enormous.
Yes, there will be. Yes,
that would be wonderful.
Yes.
Madame Mutharika, I have a personal question for you.
Yes.
What is the greatest challenge for you as an African woman?
The greatest challenge for me as an African woman, I think we still have to work towards making sure that we challenge some of these traditional customs that look at a woman as a subservient. And to do that will take a long time because it is a process. Because these days, I think educated women want to be independent in making their own decisions. And I don't think that the men of Africa have really accepted that. Of course, there are others, who have accepted that, and they give the woman, that sort of independence of making decisions and so on. But there are still others, who still don't appreciate that as women, we like to make our own decisions. We like to be able to do what we feel is right for us as individuals. So I look at some of the people, the women within my country, and sometimes I feel sorry for them because I know they have all this education, they've been educated by their parents and so on. And you look at what the husbands are doing, especially, what really angers me is that there is HIV and AIDS these days. And there is this culture, of accepting that men can have mistresses, men can do this and that. And we still see that as women, many of us are still accepting that sort of culture. And that, is what I think we really need to fight against. Women must realize that there is no point in just accepting customs that will destroy them, that will kill them. That's my biggest challenge, and I wish most of us women would stand up against such practices by the men of Africa.
You will. From hearing from these words from you, you will. What an honor and pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us here on South News. I'm Afaf Kanja. We'll see you soon.